Released in 1992, Flashback, also known as Flashback: The Quest for Identity for our American friends, was a title that was released by US Gold and developed by French software house Delphine Software International. Now, Flashback is a cinematic platform game, which means it takes its cues from platformers more like Prince of Persia as opposed to Sonic the Hedgehog or Mario, in that the game tries to tell a story in a very cinematic and more filmic manner, if you like. Now, Flashback was originally developed for the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis, and then ported across to various other platforms such as the Super Nintendo, the Commodore Amiga, and the 3DO. 4 platforms which we'll be looking at here in this video today. Now, even though the game was developed for the Mega Drive originally, the first port of it released was actually the Amiga port, which was then followed by the Mega Drive port and the SNES port, and then much later on by the 3DO port. Now, there are differences between the games, which I will discuss as we come across them, but first let's have a look at the Commodore Amiga version of the game. So, here we have the Commodore Amiga version, which was the first version released. Now, as you can see, the introduction itself kicks you off into the cinematic mood. The game is designed to be like a film. Indeed, you could argue that this is really a true interactive movie, more so than many of the FMV games that were being developed for CD-ROM at the time. Heck, part of the marketing for Flashback originally was a CD-ROM game crammed onto a cartridge or discs. And, you know, as you can see, this is really impressive stuff. This footage here was taken from a stock Amiga 500, so there is a tiny bit of slowdown because all of this animation was done, as far as I'm aware, using combination rotoscoping and polygons, although if you know any better, please feel free to correct me about this. Now, once you've got past this, you get the inevitable Amiga disc loading as the title screen comes up with a really rather nice looking sort of cyberpunky background image there. As you can see, this is the European release, so it's just called Flashback. None of this The Quest for Identity added onto it for whatever reason that the Americans felt they had to do it. I have to admit, I quite like the music on the Amiga version. That was always a strong point of Amiga games. Its sample-based music gave a unique feel to most of its software. Here we go, waiting for disc 2, because basically that intro took up the entirety of the first of the 4 discs that this game came on. And we're waiting. This was always the problem with floppy disk based systems, especially once you'd gotten used to cartridge based consoles like the Mega Drive, SNES, Master System, NES. The load times could sometimes be somewhat interminable, shall we say. But here we go, getting there, slowly, and there we go. Another brief bit of a cinematic here. Again, runs a bit slow. Like I said, this is taken from an Amiga 500. If you were playing it on an Amiga 1200, those animations are an awful lot faster. But as you can see, there's some beautifully done rotoscoped animation there. Some lovely backgrounds. Now, the animation was done through the rotoscoping process, as I mentioned, which of course means that an actor in costume was filmed and then each frame was hand drawn, so they drew over the top of it like cell animation, which was then converted into digital data, producing the incredibly lifelike animations you see here. Now, we move on to the Super Nintendo version. Again, Delphine Software, US Gold. What it doesn't mention here on this screen is this conversion was handled by masters of the shitty conversion, Teartex. Yes, now you can see that the SNES's somewhat limited CPU here causes this intro in phases to be even slower than the already chugging Amiga version. Now, it's especially apparent here, but you know, again, the music on this really well done. It's another sample based one, and it creates a really nice feel. But yeah, there's that slowdown. Horrendous. This was one of the few games that I owned on my Mega Drive when I was younger that one of my friends also owned on his Super Nintendo, and it was probably the only game he admitted was better on my Mega Drive. As you can see, different title screen here, different logo. As you can see, still no mention of tier text, but yes, it was them. Colours are slightly different on this version. A little less washed out, a little stronger. This is benefiting, of course, from the Super Nintendo's ability to display more colours on screen compared to the Amiga. But once you get in-game, there's not a huge difference in how the game looks. The animation's still the same, the backdrops are pretty much identical. I mean, okay, our hero Conrad B. Hart now has a red t-shirt on as opposed to a white t-shirt. Ooh, that's slow. But realistically, it's pretty much the same game. Obviously, difference in the sound effects. There's me messing about with the buttons, not remembering which control does which. Yep. Oh, don't want to. There we go. And again, you can see there is a lot of slowdown on these animations, which when we get to the Mega Drive version later, you'll see is not quite as bad. Which, you know, that's probably due to the Mega Drive version being the lead format for this game. This is a lovely little bit of a storytelling here. Again, it's cinematic. It's one of those cutscenes. It brings you in like a film would in its widescreen look and feel. If only more games had taken this approach. The cinematic platform game, certainly at the time, was somewhat overlooked, I feel, in favour of bog standard mascot platformers. Now, on to the 3DO version. This is one of the earlier CD-ROM versions, and as such has a drastically different introduction, taking full advantage of the 3DO's ability to display FMVs. The intro is now rendered with what appears to be a heavy metal soundtrack, but it does have a little bit more of a cyberpunky feel to it in how it looks. Perhaps not as interesting or as fun as the introduction from the other versions. This animated intro nonetheless is pretty good, especially for the time, because this would have been released in 93-94. Looks like they're using actual photos as backdrops there. Bit of nice green screen explosion. I'm sure I've seen that very same explosion in numerous films. And a new version of the logo, with a CD on there, just in case you were wondering whether this is the CD-ROM version. Nice title screen here, actually showing the logo from the box art, which is a first, I think. But when we head into the game again, another rendered cutscene, which gives it that cinematic feel. And we're in again. Again, the graphics don't look drastically different on any of the formats, which I personally think is a testament to how well the game was produced for the 16-bit machines, that even when you take a much more powerful piece of hardware like the 3DO, the game is essentially the same to all intents and purposes, barring the cutscenes and the music. Here we go, this is another cutscene. These cannot have been cheap to produce at the time, these cutscenes. This is high quality stuff for the era. These cutscenes were also used on the Sega CD version of the game, but obviously with a drastically reduced colour depth and size. This is probably the best this game looked up until the 2014 remastered version was released, which was basically redone from the ground up and released on the PlayStation 4, PC, Xbox One. And I think the Switch got a port of it as well. Yes, the Switch did get a port of it. As you can see, it does still look stunning. The animation is still outrageously good. It really is. But that's what happens when you do rotoscoping. You get beautifully realistic animations. Titles like this, Prince of Persia, the animation to me is still unparalleled for 2D titles. No matter how good an animator you are, you'll never be able to get that fluidity of movement you get from rotoscoping real footage. And now we finally come to the lead version of the game, and probably the best known version, the Mega Drive release. This was the one I bought. I picked this up in early 1993, and it blew me away. I'd seen it in the magazines. I think I must have seen it on something like Games Master or Bad Influence or some such. But as you can see, the introduction here is a little bit smoother, a little bit faster than both the Amiga and the SNES versions. A lot less slowdown. To me, this is the definitive original release of the game. Now, if you actually get the IBM PC DOS version of this game, this intro is actually longer because it's a hard drive installed. There's a couple of extra scenes within the intro, making it even more cinematic and in-depth. But, you know, the game remains the same. As you can see, same title screen as the SNES version. And we get into the game, and again, it broadly looks the same. Back to the white shirt here, much as on the Amiga version. But despite the Mega Drive having a more limited colour palette than, say, the Super Nintendo or the 3DO, you really can't tell the difference. I honestly believe if you put the footage of each version up, just the gameplay footage, you'd be hard pressed to pick which one is which. It's that good. There's still a little bit of slowdown there, not as much though, it's not as drastic as the SNES version. Now, the game's original creator and director, Paul Cuisset, I think I pronounced that right, he says this is the definitive version of the game. This was the lead version. The game was built around the limitations of the Mega Drive system, and everything else is just a port. So if you want to play Flashback as the creator originally intended it, you need to get the Mega Drive version. Either get a physical copy, emulate it. So many options out there, but this is the way to play this game, bar none. And yeah, it's a superb game. I love playing it. It picked up high scores across the board on all formats, across all magazines, and they were all justified. This game is different. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and if you really enjoyed this video, leave me a like. Borat will be very impressed with you if you do. Until next time though, this is Learned Rob saying thanks for watching, and I'll see you again.